Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for the GRM webinar, What a Modern ECM Looks Like. I'm Larry Reynolds, Vice President of Sales for GRM, and with me today, also from GRM, is Jim Leonard, our Director of Healthcare Business Development. We're very pleased to have co-presenter Cheryl McKinnon with us. Cheryl is a principal analyst at Forrester Research. She conducts research and advises executives and enterprise architect professionals on a broad range of content-related technologies. With GRM and Forrester jointly presenting today, the intention is to provide you with not only insight on market trends and technologies that are shaping the management of enterprise content, but also to help translate those insights into some conversation about how those technologies can help solve some real-world business challenges. Please note, we're reserving the last 5 to 10 minutes of this webinar for some questions and answers. Please submit all of your questions via the questions section of the webinar control panel. Okay, let's take a quick look at today's agenda. We're going to begin by discussing content and the path to digital transformation. Cheryl will then review how ECM has evolved into content services, what are the trends and the patterns of adoption. She will provide some suggestions and recommendations for moving forward along this path. Then, as I mentioned, we reserve time at the end for a Q&A session. So without further delay, I'm going to hand it over to Cheryl.
Great. Thank you very much. And I appreciate the invitation to be a guest on your webinar today. My name is Cheryl McKinnon. I've been with Forrester covering content management for just about 6 years now, and look forward to talking about some of the key trends that are driving this really interesting time in this market shift that we're seeing. Now, to start off with kind of the high-level business and technology environment, at Forrester Research, every year we take a step back and we want to understand, okay, what are the key market imperatives that are really driving how customers, enterprises out there across all industries, are focusing their business, their technology, and the strategy kind of investments. And we've been looking at this through the lens of what we call the age of the customer for a number of years now. And it simply means that organizations need to understand the power of their clients as they make their buying decisions. So for 2018, the top imperatives that we've identified is that companies out there need to drive revenue using a great customer experience. That really has become the focal point for many organizations now. They're also investing in technology so that they can differentiate themselves in their own competitive markets with digital strategy. Making those investments are going to streamline business, get those insights. Those customer insights to gain competitive advantage are another key market imperative, using the content, the data, the information at their disposal, both internal and external, to make better, faster decisions. Organizations also want to be able to accelerate their growth using innovative marketing techniques. They also want to transform their own IT organization so that they can better win, serve, and retain their clients. And of course, and this is a new one that we added at the beginning of 2018, the absolute requirement to secure their customers, protect their brand, both your brand and the clients that you serve. This move to digital means we really need to pay attention to privacy concerns, changing regulatory requirements, and of course, the security of the data that we hold. Some of the data that we have to back up some of these market imperative calls is coming from what we call our Priorities and Journey Survey. Now, Forrester Research does some very large surveys year over year, keeping an eye on the key technology and business trends affecting the clients that we serve. And for 2018 and to beyond, we wanted to understand, so what are those top business priorities that are shaping your investments and your strategy? Not surprisingly, growth of revenue comes up as number one, followed closely by the improvement of the experience for their customers. And those two, revenue growth, improved customer experience, have been a perennial number one and number two for the last several years. So it's really interesting to see how organizations are investing in improving the experience of customers as well as their employees, with an end goal to grow revenue and hold that client base. We also see that as digital transformation becomes real for many organizations, we see that organizations are at very different levels of maturity. And of course, everyone can define digital transformation slightly differently. Organizations at very early stages may be looking at just elimination of paperwork, getting some of those manual processes more automated, getting some more structure around the flow of work. Organizations that are more sophisticated and have gone to a much more mature stage are in fact starting to transform even their business models, changing the nature of the goods and the services that they take to market. And so we do see, when we think about this broader imperative, that we're seeing this evolution in terms of how we engage with our ecosystem, our partners, our suppliers, the subcontractors we engage with, and of course, clients. And so business models are very much evolving, instead of being very linear and often static, to much more nimble and modular. So we're seeing across multiple industries, programs are coming together perhaps for a 2-year initiative, joint manufacturing efforts, co-creation of intellectual property, collaboration across ecosystems. So we see a really interesting change here. And of course, if we think about it, content is one of the core underpinnings of this move to digital business. And when we think about how we cross into our supplier networks, our contract networks, our customer networks, we know that content, communication, process really underpin a lot of this. So the way that we look at how we create content, how we share it, how we process it, how we share it, and ultimately, what do we do at the end of that life cycle in terms of preserving it or even disposing of it, all needs to be rethought. And as business models change, as the use cases for content management technologies begin to change, we're understanding that we need to often look at new architectures, new models of how we deliver content management technologies. So, having watched this market evolve for the last approximately 20 years or so, we really see that modern content platforms powered by granular, flexible services are really reshaping this market that we've known as ECM for the last number of years. So we see this market continuing to transform itself. Both traditional vendors who've been in this space for a long time, looking at investing in their next generation platforms, but even more interestingly, the rise of some of the cloud native platforms coming into this space and rethinking how we can actually deliver content-centric applications to our very busy employees, information workers, and in many cases, our clients as well. We know that historically, large enterprises, especially those in regulated industries or organizations that tend to grow through things like merger and acquisition, it's been really hard to kind of execute on that dream of the one repository to rule them all, having one place to go for content and information, one place to store data. That hasn't always scaled the way that we thought it might have if we look back in history. So the landscape today is we see multiple systems from multiple vendors. And of course, with the rise of cloud services coming into the content and collaboration space, we know that this is adding to some of the complexity. But it's interesting to watch because the cloud providers are really helping to accelerate this shift from monolithic architectures designed for the world of on-premises deployment to much more flexible content platforms. So when I talk about these modern content platforms, what do we really mean? It means that we're seeing the emergence of newer approaches to delivering content and process-rich applications. And these new players are starting to erode the dominance of some of the traditional monolithic suites that you typically would have to install on premises and are hard to keep up to date, hard to maintain, hard to keep integrations current, hard to upgrade. These content platforms are enabling the looser coupling, in fact, the decoupling of the application layers, the underlying repository layers, and of course, the user interface layers. So if we think about how content flows through many of our core business activities, we know that we're serving a very diverse group of employees and users. Perhaps some users want to be able to engage with their content through a preferred CRM system or ERP system. Other clients may prefer to work with it natively in the Office productivity tool. The ability to use more of a services-oriented approach to these modern platforms means we have a lot more flexibility in terms of how we serve that user requirement. A couple of my colleagues a couple of years ago wrote a report on, this platform explosion. We hear this term all the time. What does it really mean? And we defined a software platform as a set of integrated software components and modular services assembled to support other parties as they design, build, and run specific types of logic. And those other parties could be clients who have a great development team. They could be clients that are working with systems integrators, consultants. So the ability here is to have a common set of content services, consistent repository services, but the flexibility to quickly spin up and deliver content-rich applications to serve your needs. So when we talk about this content platform, the key distinguishing feature here is that they're architected specifically for some of the content, document, records, or process-rich applications that we know we need to run our businesses. They're revealing services and APIs for application creation. So it's not just exposing 50 different features through a cumbersome desktop application. Many of us probably worked with tools like that in the past, but decomposing some of those features into APIs, into services, into callable activities so that we can spin up just the right set of capabilities our users need to get their job done, no more, no less. The modern content platform that we're seeing evolve here are also good in terms of cross-system integration and interoperability, recognizing that content is not created in a vacuum. It needs to be exposed and used through other critical line of business applications. It also means that we're looking at new and emerging pricing models. As we shift from the world of on-premises into the world of cloud, we're seeing different use cases kind of compel different approaches, licensing models and processes. So for example, the per user model, which we've all kind of used in many software experiences in the past, we see vendors now experimenting with things like service level agreement kickers, or the ability to price per document or per page. So the rise of cloud and the rise of the content platform means we've got some flexibility on the table. And we also see this modularity and support for low code or even no code application design. The ability to have a developer who knows the language of the web, create an application fairly simply, or even expose some templates. So a line of business user or a power user can spin something up because they understand their business activities. So we've been tracking this evolution from ECM to these modern services content platforms for a number of years now. And I think we're at a point now where the generational war has been won. Technology decision makers now are looking for faster to deploy, more flexible options, and are ready to start looking at cloud-first content platforms ahead of on-premises systems, and that shift is really starting to happen now. I'll turn it over to Larry.
Jim?
Hi, this is Jim Leonard. I lead the healthcare practice for GRM, and I'd just like to talk a little bit about our web-based content services platform, which we call Visual Vault. As you can see here, we have configured Visual Vault into a broad range of 5 loosely coupled service components. The first of which is advanced capture, our document analysis engine, workflow automation, intelligent forms, and finally actionable analytics. These services or microservices actually within each of these various components are available to be selected and chosen to provide the solution that exactly what our clients might be looking for. So from an advanced capture standpoint, that might be consuming documents that are scanned into the system, or HL7 messages, or XML files that are submitted to the system, or frankly, print streams from a foreign system directly to us. Those are the various microservices that we publish around the idea of advanced capture. The next area is after that data or documents are captured, they go through a document analysis engine. What specifically is the client looking for to glean out of these documents or data streams that are submitted to the platform? That those data elements that are selected and identified in those documents can be driving particular directions in workflow automation to move documents or data through a client's environment via workflow automation. We then use intelligent forms to allow users in that space to interact with that data, perhaps add additional pieces of information as that information moves throughout the organization. And then finally, each of these four front-running components provide data to our actionable analytics engine. So we not only can provide analytics on the data that we gleaned from a document, but also maybe the metadata about that document, when it was submitted, who submitted it, in what state of completion was it when it was submitted. But we also gather the metadata about the workflow associated with that document. How long did it sit in a particular queue before individuals acted upon it? Who acted upon it? So on and so forth. So in this one platform that exposes all of these varied service components is a fully integrated, comprehensive solution, a one-stop shop, if you will, of a web-based content services platform. Cheryl, back to you.
Great, thanks. The other critical thing, and one of the key trends that we're tracking in this broader content market right now, is obviously the quick pace of adoption of cloud. In the several years I've been covering this market at Forrester, I would say that the tone of the questions I get from customers when we're in inquiry calls or in advisory projects around cloud is so different than it was even 5 years ago. We are definitely seeing the adoption of cloud for any number of content-rich and collaboration-rich use cases. But it's a very interesting pattern. We see that right now cloud adoption, while it continues to accelerate, it is being deployed in kind of an embrace and extend mode right now, not really rip and replace, at least as yet. When we talk about content in the cloud, our customers are telling us that they're not just looking at this as a cost driver, right? It's not just about decommissioning in-house systems or getting rid of on-prem systems, maybe with a high maintenance cost. It is very much around looking for nimble systems. They want to be more flexible. They want to be more responsive, deliver the content applications in a timely fashion to serve their very quick changing business requirements, and continue to invest in that iterative development approach. They've always got the best possible user experience and trying to find those right kind of productivity gains. Where can people be more productive in terms of answering questions that their customers are asking, processing applications, whatever the use case might happen to be. And it's also really interesting because as we shift to cloud services, organizations are finding that they're looking at new capabilities to deliver to their users in smaller but faster iterations. They want to be able to stay competitive. And because we're moving now into these nimble, agile, services-driven content platforms, the ability to expose just enough capabilities to do their job without overcomplicating things, without introducing features and functions that perhaps are not relevant to that particular task or that particular activity. This is the ability that we have now as we shift to some of these modern systems. As we look at cloud also, one of the key benefits that our customers are indicating is that it also makes collaboration that much more easier to share information across teams, departments, regions, and even what I've been calling the extended enterprise, those outside business stakeholders that are absolutely critical to your business. And that might be customers. Maybe we want to co-create a contract or an update to an agreement. We can use the capabilities that the cloud brings to do that very easily. Or perhaps we are working on a process that involves approvals and reviews from our suppliers or someone else in our supply chain. The ability to extend into that extended enterprise is one of the unique capabilities that cloud services brings to the table. It just makes it that much easier than some of the traditional on-premises systems. So many of the clients that we're looking at, when they are looking at adopting content in the cloud, we see the pattern is very much around new use cases going to cloud first, new programs, new lines of businesses, using cloud services to support those teams versus using perhaps existing investments on premises. And then we see that there's really this kind of a 2-year tipping point our data is telling us that right now, although we see cloud services embracing and extending existing on-prem investments, not just legacy ECM systems, but even on-prem enterprise applications, CRM systems, whatever that might be. But that 2-year tipping point, it really is right around the corner as organizations are becoming convinced that cloud services provide the right mix of capabilities, the pricing models make sense. We are going to start to see a much more wholesale transfer of on-prem content into cloud over the next approximately 2 years.
So what Cheryl's talking about what clients are looking for exactly mirrors with our experience with what our clients have demanded of us as we've been presenting solutions based on Visual Vault. We're looking for a purely web-based design. We don't want to have to install components in all of our workstations that are going to access this system. We want it delivered purely via a web browser. We want a robust and resilient infrastructure. GRMs happens to be hosted on Amazon's AWS. What does that mean? That means that the data that the clients are submitting to our environment and that our platform is managing for them is replicated across a number of different data centers in the United States. So we automatically have a fault-tolerant environment. But even more than that, we have the ability to leverage Amazon's AWS to, at a time when a client has a particularly large amount of work that they need to push through the system, we can actually go out and consume additional resources from Amazon to manage that large bolus of work and work that through and still maintain very acceptable levels of performance for the client to get that work done. And as soon as that large bolus of work is finished, we can shed those resources again back to Amazon, keeping the cost per page or cost per document or cost per transaction as low as possible for our clients. They're also looking for all of the components in a modern platform in a single platform. They don't want to see that these 4 steps are within Visual Vault, but maybe there's another step that is done by another platform. They want to see all of the steps that are necessary to deliver a particular application within one platform as it is designed within our Visual Vault environment. They'd like to see some templated solutions. Those template solutions that we provide are sometimes vertical industry specific or horizontal across industries. We provide templated intelligent forms. We have workflows that are already set up that just need slight modifications to tailor the various templated solutions to a particular client's business need. They also are looking for a modern, clean user interface that allows their users to easily and intuitively see how they need to interact with the system, and that promotes a rapid adoption. They want the ability to create their own intelligent forms and to manage their own workflows with visual tools within that platform so that they can adapt the configuration that was originally set up as their business needs change. And all of this boils down to the fact that we provide our customers with business process agility. As their business changes, as their business evolves, they can tweak the system and allow that system to manage that process or those processes as that evolution occurs. Cheryl, back to you.
Great. So just some of the data that we've been tracking in terms of this shift to cloud. And again, one of the large-scale surveys that Forrester does year over year is our annual software survey. And so we track the pace of adoption to software as a service across many different technology categories. And so when we look at the content management space, in 2017, We see that currently about 31% are using software as a service to complement some of their existing content applications. But 35%, in fact, are currently using SaaS or plan to be fully SaaS over the next couple of years. So, this really is kind of a phased migration that we're watching, but the tipping point, I think, is quite clear that the direction is to content in the cloud. Now, the other key trend here that's really kind of shaping and upending some of the traditional content management thinking is this whole rise of analytics and these intelligent content services that I think have the potential to really transform a lot of existing programs. When we think about the rise of analytics, this can really kind of look at the rise of machine learning, intelligent recognition, data extraction capabilities, and of course, automation services. One of my colleagues not long ago wrote a report about the future of white-collar work, sharing your cubicle with robots, and coined the term the cognitive tipping point. And I really thought that term resonated in the content management market. So, I think by 2021, if not a little bit sooner, even ECM will hit its own cognitive tipping point. And what that means is that inflection point at which cognitive technology transforms a given segment of work by interacting with humans naturally and by turning data into insights and action. So if we look around the market landscape, we know that we've got a lot of these intelligent or cognitive services coming from many of the major cloud providers. New approaches to things like image tagging, video tagging, language translation, speech to text, a lot of really interesting innovation. And the big innovation is coming in the cloud providers. We've been looking at automated categorization for documents and records for many years, the ability to extract data from scanned or other static images. So we know that that market has been relatively mature in the content management space, but this is really taking it to the next level, where it's not just training systems using forms and templates or pulling metadata out of file properties, but now using some of these intelligent services to even extract themes and concepts from the documents themselves. So this is an area that's going to be, I think, one to really watch over the next 1 to 2 years, and new use cases will certainly be coming to the forefront. Some of these new opportunities, as we see this rise of these intelligent content services, first is, reduce what I've started to call, information or content FOMO, the fear of missing out. We know that organizations have multiple systems out there, and using some of these smarter tools to help us make better connections, between people and content, being able to do better recommendations of, perhaps content that's relevant to me that perhaps one of my team members has created, but I haven't seen yet. I expect to see a lot more of these underlying algorithms understand, how do we share information, how do we use it, what do we read, who do we work with, and providing a much richer set of recommendations, both from within a particular application or even from other applications as well. We also know that this is going to give us some opportunities, especially as data volume, document and records in digital format, that volume continues to grow. How can we consistently apply policies and whatever governance rules we have across these different content applications we need to deliver to our busy information workers? So where can we use some of these intelligent services to automate things like tagging the right kind of retention or security policy on a digital record? How can we make sure that we're organizing things by extracting the right metadata, learning from similar patterns? This looks like a contract, so let's categorize it as such. Expect to see some of these use cases really come to life. And of course, this contextual capture, this automation of content, one of the struggles that users have had with traditional ECM systems certainly has been related to user adoption. In some of the panel surveys that I run every year, meaning that I run a survey, people who read our content management research, who log inquiries with us, every year I like to take their pulse and just ask, what are your top challenges? What are your top investments? And user adoption consistently comes up as one of the top 1 or 2 challenges. So by looking at ways to have technology do that heavy lifting, do more of the data extraction, do more of the categorization, automate process where we can, this really is going to help free up our employee resources, let them get busy on much more productive or higher value tasks. And, related to that, as we know that we're running into this era of shifting content into the cloud, looking at migration initiatives that aren't going to delay our investments in new platforms, knowing that we can bring, large scale volumes of content into our cloud applications, and again, use some of these technologies to automate how we organize them, how we tag them, extract the metadata, enrich them even as part of that process. So expect that to pick up steam as well. We really see that the opportunity to bring some of these analytics, algorithms, whether we call it AI or machine learning, depending on the service or the tools that we bring to the table, there really is a lot of opportunity. In our panel survey, we asked our ECM decision makers, so where do you sit with respect to bringing some of these analytics or automated tools into your content management initiative? And 44% are interested, but actually had no firm plans to actually do anything, whether it's a pilot or test or anything like that. So a lot of interest, but still opportunity on the table, followed by the 24% who are planning to implement in the next 12 months. And just 20-some percent that are actively doing something today. So early stage kind of experimentation. So again, opportunity on the table.
So Cheryl talked about the idea of the modern content services platform to take over the mundane tasks that many staff do today to free them to do more valuable work, right? So how does a modern content services or ECM platform, how does that create value? So the very first aspect is to consume documents and data however they arrive. Are they interfaced to the system? Are they scanned images that then need to be worked? Is it a print stream that needs to be analyzed? So we have to have that flexibility in how documents and data are consumed by this modern content services platform. Then we're going to do that mundane work that the staff maybe does today with that document, with those pieces of data, in analyzing that information for pertinent content. And based on that pertinent content, whether that's extracting data elements to send on to a foreign system, maybe to release a data entry group, by feeding that system the data from these documents automatically, or analyzing those documents for certain content and making decisions on what automated workflow this document has to enter based on the data associated with that document. So we're driving these documents and this data to certain workflows based on that analysis that's performed. We integrate intelligent forms into this workflow to allow the users to, now they get to see that data that's already been decided upon, already somewhat managed, already somewhat understood, and they get to add their own pieces of information into that workflow via intelligent forms, and then aggregate all of this information from all of these 4 prior processes into a valuable analytical engine. So what the modern platform does is provides analysis and analytics versus the previous generation 1 ECM platform that does store and share. Cheryl, next slide, please. So the Visual Vault platform actually separates the analysis activity via an analysis engine from the analytics work. So the analysis engine looks at these documents and data streams and pulls out pertinent content. We automatically classify and index those documents, obviously, but we also extract data and can send it on to foreign systems. Again, we're driving workflow based on that varied content. Maybe a purchase order above a certain dollar value gets routed to a different workflow than one below a certain dollar value, that type of thing. We're capturing that discrete data and distributing it to the foreign systems. So all that work that was previously done by staff members, we've freed them to go do more high-value tasks. And in the meantime, we're handling this all via the analytics engine, which then unlocks previously unavailable information. So that's the idea of document analysis. Cheryl, the next slide, please. So now we're feeding all of this information into the Visual Vault analytics engine. So we're aggregating this information gathered by all the previous Visual Vault components or modules. We're acting not only on discrete data, but the metadata associated with either the documents or the workflow as well. What we're doing is providing business insight into both the processes and the previously hidden data that was formerly buried in these documents or data streams. The analytics engine can aggregate results over many documents and data streams to give folks a wide view, or we can zero in on specific content and highlight some unique characteristic of specific documents or a specific interface message coming down the street to us. All of this is built into a modern drill down interface, which really transforms this data into true business insight for our clients. Cheryl, back to you.
Great, thank you. So as we kind of think about this evolution of the broader enterprise content management space and recognize that we're moving into the era of cloud, we're moving into the era of modern content services platforms, our use cases, are beginning to change as well. So as you're looking at your own content management roadmap and you're planning for not just today, but for the next couple of years, really think through that flow of information. When you think about your documents, your records, the data, the metadata associated with your documents and records across these critical business processes that really underpin how you go to market, how you produce goods and services, how you serve your clients or patients or students. That flow of information increasingly is including, this extended enterprise. So, I often encourage organizations, really kind of trace through that flow of content from a horizontal perspective. What teams need to be involved at various stages of the content lifecycle as we create it, as we review it and approve it, as we collaborate on it, as we distribute it, share it, and then ultimately feed it into some of our other line of business information, extract some of that data, the figures, the information we need to feed more downstream processes. Think about also that end point of the life cycle. Where do we need to keep things? How long do we need to keep things? How do we safely dispose of things when it comes to the end of a natural life cycle? So that flow of information, both inside and outside of the organization, is really how we have to think about our content going forward. And don't discount that role of these trusted external parties in this digital work. This is really where cloud comes through the surface in terms of enabling a lot of that cross-team, cross-company, and even intercompany type of information and exchange and collaboration. So think about the cloud strategy that's going to be right for you. Different businesses are in different phases of cloud adoption, cloud maturity. We see that the kinds of questions that we get as organizations look to cloud are much more sophisticated now than they were even just a few years ago. So understanding how to ask those questions of the vendor so you've got that trust that your content is safe. But look at that cloud strategy that's going to balance the needs of your busy information workers, those business users who are engaging with content and using it to drive business and other activities, and balance it with the security and compliance requirements of your particular industry or jurisdiction. So when you take a look at the future, think cloud first, think flexible, modern content platforms, and pay attention to user experience. That's probably the number one recommendation is, user adoption is really what's going to drive your return on investment or whatever other kind of success measurements you put on the table. So make sure that you're looking at modern tools that are going to fulfill those needs. And with that, I'll hand it back to our hosts.
All right, thank you. As I mentioned, we're going to have a Q&A session, and submit all of your questions. You can see the questions section of the control panel to the right of your screen there. Just enter your questions there, and we'll respond to them. I do see one question. I'll read it out. In managing case files in a law firm, would this platform be able to manage electronic case files while also communicating to the accounting and billing program, therefore being able to manage retention per compliance regulations? The answer to that is yes, but I'll give you a little bit of an explanation. First of all, Visual Vault has a very powerful retention management capability. So you're going to be able to enter retention schedules and have that automatically managed, automatically communicated, and you can set that up to have files deleted whenever they reach their retention date, or you can put them on a legal hold if they're involved in, say, a lawsuit. Another thing about that is we can create that low-code integration to your accounting and your billing programs, but we've also got a capability for law firms that many firms have a litigation support system or other systems supporting content for case and matter files. We do have a capability where if you're using one of those systems, you can use that for document management functions for active matters, active cases, and then have any closed matter automatically exported or migrated directly into Visual Vault. And like you mentioned, managing retention schedules is a huge issue for law firms. So closing a matter would automatically trigger setting a retention schedule. The other thing we can do is set up a client portal. That client portal would allow clients to view and download any document related to a closed case or a closed matter as a billable service to the firm. So if you're interested in that, give us a call because I can explain that in a lot more detail.